Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome in to Tider Insider TV, as you just heard, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa. I'm Gary Harris, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. And Rodney, Alabama's football recruiting roll continued this evening, just a little more than about nearly an hour and a half ago, when 6'5", 325-pound offensive lineman Mal Waldrep from powerhouse Central High School in Phenix City committed to the Crimson Tide. Now, back on April 26th, he announced his top four, with Alabama being included along with Clemson, Florida, and Tennessee. Waldrep visited Clemson on May 31st, and then Alabama on June 7th. He had scheduled visits to Florida on June 14th and Tennessee on June 21st. Those probably won't happen now. Waldrep plays tackle for head coach Patrick Nix and the Red Devils, but he is projected as an interior offensive line in college, a lineman, guard, or possibly even center. Let me bring Rodney in here. As we said, Alabama's been on a roll. This is a big young man who is just getting better. I watched him in high school playing for those state championship teams down there at Central-Phenix City. A guy that, as big as he is now, he's still kind of growing into that body. I really like him. I think he's tough. I think he's hard-nosed. If you want a comparison, I hate to do this, but he reminds me a little bit of Bradley Bozeman.
I was thinking the same thing. We didn't even talk about that. That's a great comparison coming out of high school. You know, Gary, I look at him, again, we saw Bradley Bozeman, the way he developed. I think this young man, Mal Waldrep, has the same kind of potential in that way. I think he can develop physically. I think they'll do a fantastic job with him. You mentioned him playing on the interior in college on this level. Yeah, I think he's got the ability to have that versatility, probably guard, maybe center, and that's really what you want from your players that you bring in to be able to play multiple positions.
All right, Alabama recruits nationwide, but it is the University of Alabama, and in-state recruiting is always important. This is Alabama's fifth in-state commitment now, as he joins linebacker Miles Johnson, defensive lineman Antonio Coleman, running back Anthony Rogers, and athlete Derek Smith. And so it's a pretty good number of in-state commitments already, Rod.
Yeah, it is, and some of those guys still
especially when you know Auburn's really making a push for in-state this year.
That's exactly right, and Auburn's still recruiting some of these guys. Some of them have taken visits to Auburn. So again, it's a long process, but I think being able to emphasize the state is something you always want to be able to get the best players from your state. Right now, I think Kalen DeBoer is doing a pretty good job. I mean, there are guys around the state that have visited. Naeem Alford, for example, from Parker, who's committed to Ohio State. It's a lot more competitive than it used to be in the state of Alabama.
Well, I said Alabama's on a roll, and Waldrop's a big piece of it, but you don't get on a roll with just one commit, right? You have a series of them. On Monday, offensive lineman Michael Carroll from Doylestown, Pennsylvania, committed to the Crimson Tide. He was on campus this past weekend for an official visit. He's 6'6" and 315 himself. He's known as Big Mike, and he certainly is on the social media platform X. He's a four-star prospect and the first offensive line commit for the 2025 class, followed up quickly by Waldrep. This is a guy who, Penn State made him a priority right there in his home state. In fact, he's a legacy. His father's a former Penn State linebacker, recruited nationwide. There you see Coach Cap with the offensive line coach from Alabama with Michael Carroll. Rodney, when your finalists are Alabama, Penn State, Michigan, and Georgia, that's really all you have to say about what kind of player he is.
That's really good. I mean, he had offers from everyone. You remember last week, we previewed him. We said, watch out. He's visiting this coming weekend, which he did, and we thought he might pull the trigger. He did. So really outstanding player. Look, I think when you get him, you get Waldrep. You've got some other guys that you're recruiting. We've talked about Ty Haywood, who visited a couple of weeks ago, the 5-star from Denton, Texas, Gary. You're starting to lay a really good foundation. Now, Haywood hasn't committed yet. Let's be clear. But obviously Carroll and now Waldrep. But this is a good foundation start for the offensive line.
It really is. And if you were to add Haywood.
Oh, wow.
Wow, then you're really talking about potentially a special offensive line class.
Yeah, and they had some other guys, Douglas Utu from Las Vegas, Nevada, Bishop Gorman High School, visited last weekend. They've got some more guys coming in that are really highly touted players. Micah Dubose from Viger, for example. So, look, I think they're going to have a really strong offensive line class and a strong class overall.
As I said, on a roll. 3 commits in 4 days this past Saturday. 4-star defensive back Chuck McDonald from famed Dei High School in Santa Ana, California, committed to the Crimson Tide, 6'1", 180. He picked Alabama over offers from Georgia, USC, and Oregon. He is the third Dei High School cornerback that, he will be the third when he joins the roster at Alabama, joining Xavier Brown and Damani Jackson. He says he chose Alabama because, quote, I want to be the best, and there's no better place to be. So, Rodney, you look at this guy, you look at that program, high-level quarterback. This is the kind of players that Nick Saban recruited. And Alabama's continuing to recruit the same type of talent with Coach DeBoer and his staff as they did under Nick Saban.
And this program that he comes from, obviously same high school as Bryce Young. I mean, it's one of the best programs in the country, highly competitive, played against some of the best competition in the country. He's a competitive kid. Look at him. I mean, just look the way he carries himself on the field. You can tell he's got a lot of competitor in him. This is a big pickup. Georgia was in there, several other top programs. For Alabama to land him, this is huge pickup. You mentioned the kind of the pipeline, Gary, with Mater Dei. Think about this, too. They have Abdul Sanders committed to linebackers, an outstanding player as well from Mater Dei.
Yeah, it's rolling. And, again, I think that nickname that a lot of people tried to pin on Coach DeBoer, Husky Harsin, that's gone. That's buried. I think they're trying to come up with a new one now.
Yeah.
Let's get to Coach Talk. All right. It's time for Coach Talk. And earlier in the spring, when I had an opportunity to sit down and speak with head coach Kalen DeBoer, I asked him about perspective on recruiting. The difference between the Pac-12 and the SEC, Washington and Alabama. He said, yeah, it's more intense in the Southeastern Conference, but he says the priorities in recruiting don't change and that he has the right people in place to get the job done on the recruiting trail at Alabama.
It's intense down here. It's competitive. There's a lot of schools that are very close to each other. But I have a staff around me that I really feel has many of those same priorities in place with building relationships. It's important to them, and they get it. And so I love the organization we have, who's in place from Courtney Morgan as the general manager on down. And then I love the way our assistant coaches have embraced and just been all in.
You heard Coach say it's about relationships. Those relationships continue even if you change schools. Alabama brought in a special guest for recruiting pitcher of the weekend, Atlanta Falcons quarterback Michael Penix Jr. He never went to UA, but he really knows the offensive system under Kalen DeBoer. He was a Heisman Trophy finalist at Washington, also played for DeBoer when DeBoer was the offensive coordinator at Indiana. Led Washington to the national championship game. Quarterback is still the most important position on the field, and when you got a guy like this that's willing to vouch for Coach DeBoer to the point that he comes over and visits, that says a lot.
Gary, the way I understand it is he shows up, he's outside the football complex. Nobody even knows he's here. He calls Kalen DeBoer and says, Coach, I'm outside, man. Wow. I wanted to come by and see you guys. That's the relationships that he builds. I think this is why, Alabama, we talked about Harsin, supposedly. Harsin. We talked about Coach DeBoer calling him Husky Harsin. Wouldn't be able to recruit. He builds a lot of strong relationships.
Yeah, so it's looking good. And, again, Alabama's got the 2024 season coming up first for Coach DeBoer, but you're always building for the future. And you do that. Even in the portal and NIL era, you still do that through high school football recruiting. That's still, I think, going to be the lifeblood ultimately. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television. Alabama basketball is getting some significant upgrades to its facilities. We'll have all the details. And some of the kickoff times have been revealed for Alabama football. They said they were going to reveal them all, but, Alabama's popular, so they get what they call the flex time. So about half the games we still don't know for sure. But we'll have the latest details coming up. And in just a little bit, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number, 205-348 WVUA, that's 348-9882. There's the email address that you can email address us at on your screen. And we're looking forward to hearing from you in just a little bit right here on TITV. And we're back on TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Alabama men's basketball is getting some more facility upgrades. No, they're not getting a new Coliseum, but they're getting a lot, and it seems to be what Nate Oates and the players want. Alabama's Finance Committee approved the proposal to expand the men's basketball practice facility. This is some of the meeting from the Board of Trustees. The project will cost $58.674 million, with $36.9 million paid by a bond sale, and the rest of the funding coming from a UA reserve and gift fund. UA Director of Athletics Greg Burns says this will provide the space for both the men's and women's basketball teams to train and develop. And Rodney, let's just cut to the chase. We thought we were going to get a brand new Coliseum, but what happened? Well, inflation. And first, they were going to redo it, then they were going to build a new one, and the price has just skyrocketed. Coach Oates, from what I understand, said, hey, we got to have money for NIL. And what's more important to the players than where they play their games, which it's still a very serviceable facility, but day-to-day. What are they doing day-to-day? So this is going to be a state-of-the-art training facility. I think they'll have all their nutrition in there. They'll just have pretty much everything they need for their day-to-day operation. And then, as we know, Coleman is a 50-plus-year-old facility, but at the same time, it can still rock. So, better to get this than wait around several more years for a new Coliseum. And you can still build a new Coliseum at some point and this be attached to it.
Well, I think if you look at recruiting, you look at how they're attracting players out of the portal, I don't think
that's not an issue.
That's right. The arena is not an issue. I think this is what Nate Oates wanted. I know a lot of fans say, why are we going to build this training facility? We'd rather have a new arena. Well, Nate Oates wanted this training facility. I think it's top priority. I think it's something that will enhance recruiting. Again, I don't think the arena is something that would affect recruiting at all. It's obviously not affecting it. So I think this is something that Nate Oates wanted. Gary, again, it's elevating Alabama's facility to some of the best in the country.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It continues from year to year. You're never done when it comes to facilities. You're always trying to move forward and upgrade. They never stop. But this, I'm with you, I think, and I'm obviously trust Nate Oates on this. That day-to-day facility, they can get in it quicker. They can start getting use out of it, and it's going to make a big difference for a program that already is among the best in the country. All right, let's get back to football. 2 more kickoff times for Alabama games have been announced by the Southeastern Conference. The Tide will kick off at 11 a.m. against South Carolina in Bryant-Denny Stadium on October the 12th, and will host Mercer at 1 p.m. on November the 16th. The South Carolina game will air on either ESPN or ABC, and the Mercer game will be on the streaming of ESPN and SEC Network Plus. Additionally, the SEC said Alabama's game October 5th at Vanderbilt will kick off in the afternoon window in Nashville, which will be either 2:30 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. Games against Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, Oklahoma, and Auburn were all assigned to the flex category, which means they could either start in the afternoon or evening slots. ESPN said exact start times will be announced no later than 6 days before kickoff. So, right, I kind of got a chuckle this morning when I saw it coming out on social media that SEC schedule is going to be announced. Yeah, we got a few games, but it turns out Alabama's still about half of its games not because of that flex deal. But I get it, but at least we know a little bit more about what the schedule's going to look like.
You do, and I think when you look at it too, Gary, those early games, those first couple of games being kind of later in the afternoon, evening, I think certainly the heat is a factor. And then, of course, when you go to Wisconsin, you've got an 11 a.m. kickoff there in the third game. I mean, and I know a lot of people were hoping, I know at least up there at Wisconsin, that would be a primetime game.
Yeah, I was, but Fox has got it. They want another big new kickoff. Of course, the first 2 games, we know already, 6:30 contest at home against Western Kentucky and South Florida. We're thankful for evening kicks. And I guess from an Alabama perspective, that 11 a.m. kickoff in Madison, probably not the worst of things.
No, I mean, it's not. Preferably, it would have been, to me, 2:30, in that time slot. But, look, I think it's going to be a great atmosphere up there regardless of the time.
And you asked, why is Alabama having so many games flexed? Because it's Alabama. and ESPN and ABC, they want to keep their options open when it comes to the Crimson Tide. Well, still to come on TITV, 2 Alabama baseball players have decided to return for next season. Find out who's coming back to give it another go with the Tide. And up next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number right there on your screen, 205-348-9882, or you can email us, TITV@WVUA23.com. We'll be right back with your phone calls on the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. Good news for Alabama baseball as incredible freshman shortstop Justin LeBron is going to run it back. And so is outstanding power pitcher Riley Quick, who really didn't even pitch this season because of Tommy John surgery. They both say they're going to come back for the 2025 season. LeBron last year, all SEC first team freshman honors, 344. Quick, as we mentioned, didn't get to pitch, but boy, he would have made a difference. He'll make a difference next year. These are the kind of players you got to have if you're going to get back to Omaha at some point. These are 2 players that could go anywhere in the country, and I'm guarantee you could have gone in the portal and gone anywhere in the country. Rodney, good news, they're coming back.
Great news to get them back, both.
All right, let's jump out on the phone lines. We're going to start off with our pal Rick over in Brent. Hey, Rick, good evening.
Hey, how are y'all tonight?
Doing well.
Good. Gary, I'm real sorry about your mom.
Thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Do you think the principal reason why Saban left was because of the NIL and the portal and he just got sick of it?
Yeah, Rick, you ask a question, I'll give you the answer. I do. Now, listen, there were other things too, and timing is everything, and looking at it now, I think he timed it out perfectly. But if you're asking me if the NIL and the portal weren't in place, do I think he'd still be coaching? My answer is yes. I don't know what Rodney believes.
Yeah, and I think, too, you mentioned there were potentially other things as well. I think, Rick, it kind of got to the point, too, and he mentioned this, a little bit of difficulty getting consistent coaches. I mean, it became tough for Rick.
Sure.
I mean, at his age, and how long are you going to be there, Coach? If you go to Alabama, how long will your staff be there? So I think that had a lot to do with it as well.
Thank you, Rick. Let's get to our email question of the day, and it's brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, KDM Service Corporation serves your family like our family. And here's our email question today. It's from our pal Jim out in Sparks, Nevada. Is Kinley Cahalan unhappy, or does she feel like she can make more progress somewhere else? Of course, we've already announced that she's gone in the portal. I don't know, Jim, to be honest with you. I haven't talked to her. I haven't talked to anybody that really is close to her situation. As far as being developed, I mean, Alabama's been to the College World Series 15 times and 26 seasons with Patrick Murphy as the head coach, 28 seasons total. So people get developed around here pretty well. Hey, it's the portal era. Sometimes, for whatever reason, players just want to change. And, you're focused on Alabama, and we are too. We're doing TITV. But it's happening all over the country.
All over the country. And, again, when these young ladies in this instance transfer, I mean, there's a reason for that, or reasons for that. Sometimes, you get to a place you just don't feel like you're a fit, whatever it is. But, she made that decision.
All right, we're going to get to more phone calls. In fact, phone lines, I'm told by Stu, are open. That's rare, 205-348-WVUA. Also, the men's and women's track and field teams getting it done at the Outdoor Championships, in the NCAA Outdoor Championships. We'll have an update on that. And there are your phone numbers again, or your phone number, 205-348-9882. Also, you can email us at the address on your screen. We'll be right back with, let's get some phone calls going. We'll be back after this. The NCAA Track and Field Championships in Eugene, Oregon have wrapped up, and Alabama did really well. In the women's side of things, Doris Lemngole won the 3,000-meter steeplechase national title, helping the women's team finish 7th overall out in Eugene. Of course, Eugene, Oregon is kind of the track hub of the country. Meanwhile, for the men's track and field side, Alabama freshman Samuel Ogazi finished 2nd in the 400 meters, and Chris Robinson finished 2nd in the 400-meter hurdles, helping lead Alabama to a 4th-place finish in the men's standing. So top 10s for both the men and the women. Welcome back into TITV alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Phone lines are open. You can get through right quick. I always say you can't get through. 205-348-9882. If you call right now, we'll get you in. Let's get to an email question in the meantime. And this one is going to be from Terry over in Gadsden. Do you guys like that Alabama has 2 bye weeks? It's a good question, and I do, Terry. I think with the way the schedule is now, if you play 12 games and then you play, hopefully in the SEC Championship game, then you might play several more games. I like the idea that they're going to have a bye right before the Georgia game after those first 3 games of the season, and then a bye before LSU, which is their traditional bye. I do like it.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I thought when looking at the schedule, that bye before the Georgia game, I think that could be really big. Of course, Georgia has a bye that week as well. Mm-hmm. And like you said, the traditional bye there with LSU.
Breaking it up a little bit. It is a long season, that's for sure. All right, let's get to one more email real quick, and I heard the phones ringing, so we may get a phone call in as well. Our last email, Robert in Calera. Will Alabama men's basketball add any more players? Robert, I don't think so. They've got 13 scholarships. They got a 13 scholarship roster. It's one of the best in the country. I think unless somebody were to leave, Rodney, they got the 13 they're going to go to battle with.
Yeah, it looks like it's done. Gary, and I also say this real quickly. A lot of people say, will Alabama football add any more? There is potential that could happen. Mm-hmm. Again, not likely, but still a possibility.
All right, real quickly, let's get to Putty over in Alabaster on the phone lines. Putty, how are you?
Good. There's a lot of chatter out there. I hope you guys are doing all right about us losing to Wisconsin, and I don't see it, so I would like your opinion.
Yeah, I don't see it either, but I'll tell you this, I also don't take that game for granted. I heard somebody say today on television, one of the talking heads, well, Alabama's got 3 tune-up games before the bye and then Georgia. Going to Madison, Wisconsin is not a tune-up game. It's a tough football game. I do think Alabama will win it, but it's not a gimme.
Yeah, I think when you look at Luke Fickell in his 2nd year, I think they're going to take a big jump. I really do. I think he's a fantastic coach. He's done a great job. He's had some really good defenses. Had great defenses at Cincinnati. As you remember when they had that playoff run. Yeah. 11 a.m. in Madison. I think it'll be a tough game.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails. Still to come, Malachi Moore uses his platform to do a worthwhile community project. We'll have the details. It's a beautiful night in Tuscaloosa, and we'll be back with TITV. We'll wrap it up right after this. Alabama defensive back Malachi Moore back at his old stomping grounds, Hewitt-Trussville High School on Saturday, and he hosted an inaugural camp. 170 campers in attendance. Why not? Learn from the hometown boy that made good at the University of Alabama. Other Alabama players, Tim Smith, Keon Sabb, Brayson Hubbard, Cam Howard, Jamarian Latham, Hunter Osborne all on hand, as was assistant coach HaHa Clinton Dix. Also on Saturday, the 4th annual Magic City Showcase was held at Legion Field. Over 300 students were there for that one. Jalen Mbakwe and Jeremiah Beeman were on hand. Alabama players helping out young people with their camps. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Tider Insider TV, presented to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. And a reminder that if you missed any of the show, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or anytime at WVOA23.com. All right, before we close, I would be remiss if I did mention that this is the first TITV without my mom. She was biased, but this was her favorite show.
Yeah.
Been there 25 years, and she didn't miss it. I'm going to miss her. All right, we're going to leave you tonight with a video of Alabama basketball signee Darion Reed. He and the Team USA under 18 won the FIBA America Cup tournament in Argentina. USA beat Argentina 110-70 in the final this past Sunday. He's going to be a great player at Alabama. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching TITV, and we'll talk to you again next week.